Hello YIS Media family. Hello book lovers. How are you? Today we present to you an excerpt from a great book titled Make Today Count by John C. Maxwell. Subscribe to the media, like and share the video, and if you have an opinion on the story, leave it in the comment section. Thank you. Now directly to the narrative. Thinking. I was very fortunate. I learned about the power of good thinking very early in life. My father required all three of his children to read for 30 minutes every day. Sometimes we chose what we read, but often he selected the reading material for us. Two of the books he asked me to read made a profound impression on me. The first was The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale, which I read in the 7th grade. 10 That year, my father also took me to Veterans Memorial Auditorium in Columbus, Ohio, to hear and meet Dr. Peale. It shaped my life. Even more important than meeting Dr. Peale was reading As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. 11 I read the book in 1961. When I was 14 years old, and it made such an impression on me that I was prompted to make one of my daily dozen decisions. I still have the book. On page 49, Allen wrote, "All that a man achieves or fails to achieve is the direct result of his thoughts." The entire book made an impression on me, but that statement made me realize that my thinking would make or break me. So I decided, I will think on things that will add value to myself and others. Making the decision to practice and develop good thinking daily. If you desire to make good thinking a daily part of your life, consider this. Understand that great thinking comes from good thinking. One night at dinner, a friend of John Kilcullen's described something he overheard in a bookstore. A customer asked the clerk, "Do you have any simple books on Microsoft DOS? Something like DOS for Dummies." It was only a passing comment, meant as a joke. But it stuck with Kilcullen. And he did something with it. He launched the Dummies books. Some unknown consumer had a good idea, and it went nowhere. In fact, he probably didn't even know his idea was a good one. But in the hands of a thinker, that good idea became a great idea. Then it became a bunch of great ideas. The Dummies books now encompass a product line of 370 titles in 31 languages with sales of more than 60 million copies. 12. If you want to become a great thinker, you first need to become a good thinker. Before becoming a good thinker, you need to become a thinker. In order to become a thinker, you need to be willing to first produce a bunch of mediocre and downright bad ideas. Only by practicing and developing your thinking daily will your ideas get better. Your thinking ability is determined not by your desire to think, but by your past thinking. To become a good thinker, do more thinking. Once the ideas start flowing, they get better. Once they get better, they keep improving. Recognize there are many kinds of thinking. Up to now I've referred to thinking as if it were a single skill. But the truth is that it's really a collection of skills. It's like a mental decathlon, the track and field contest where athletes compete in 10 events: 100-meter dash, 400-meter dash, long jump, shot put, high jump, 110-meter hurdles, discus throw, pole vault, javelin throw, and 1,500-meter run. Thinking is multifaceted. I believe 11 different thinking skills come into play when it comes to good thinking. I wrote about them in detail in Thinking for a Change. Here is an overview of the skills. 1. Big picture thinking, the ability to think beyond yourself and your world in order to process ideas with a holistic perspective. 2. Focused thinking, the ability to think with clarity on issues by removing distractions and mental clutter from your mind. 3. Creative thinking, the ability to break out of your box of limitations and explore ideas and options to experience a breakthrough. 4. Realistic thinking, the ability to build a solid foundation on facts to think with certainty. 5. Strategic thinking, the ability to implement plans that give direction for today and increase your potential for tomorrow. 6. Possibility thinking, the ability to unleash your enthusiasm and hope to find solutions for even seemingly impossible situations. 7. Reflective thinking, the ability to revisit the past in order to gain a true perspective and think with understanding. 8. Questioning popular thinking, the ability to reject the limitations of common thinking and accomplish uncommon results. 9. Shared thinking, the ability to include the heads of others to help you think over your head and achieve compounding results. 10. Unselfish thinking, the ability to consider others and their journey to think with collaboration. 11. Bottom line thinking, the ability to focus on results and maximum return to reap the full potential of your thinking. 13. It's a real mistake to believe there is only one kind of thinking. That's a very narrow view. It can cause a person to value only the kind of thinking in which he excels and to dismiss all other types of thinking. I'm sorry to say that some academicians fall into this trap. Maximize your strengths and staff your weaknesses. Most people are naturally good at a few thinking skills and weak at others. Just as it's rare to find an athlete who is good enough in all 10 events to compete in the decathlon, it's a rare thinker who has skill in all 11 thinking areas. So if you recognize that there are many different kinds of thinking, what should you do? Should you try to master all of them? No, I believe that's a mistake. Let's say, for example, that you are a very good creative thinker, but you're weak in bottom line thinking, yet you want to master both kinds of thinking. How would you get started? Where would you focus your attention? You could probably work on bottom line thinking to get it up to average, but that would require a tremendous amount of time, energy, and resources. And what would it take to advance to merely good? It would take even more effort. The higher you try to climb, the more energy it takes to make less progress. No matter how hard you try, you might not ever make bottom line thinking a strength. What if you gave that time to improving your creative thinking instead? Since you are already good, a moderate amount of time and energy could make you excellent. If you really gave it your all, perhaps you could become a world-class creative thinker. That would enable you to generate ideas and make contributions few others could. That would make you much more valuable and give you a real advantage in your life and career. So what do you do about your weaknesses? Gather people around you who are strong in those areas. That's what I've done for years. In my current season of life, I can hire staff who possess strengths in my areas of weakness. But even before I was the boss, I practiced this principle. For 35 years. My wife, Margaret, and I have worked as a team to compensate for each other's weaknesses. I've often relied on my brother, Larry, to help me in the area of realistic thinking. And I've made it a practice to partner with friends who think better than I do in a particular area while I do the same for them. Not having to rely entirely on myself when it comes to thinking has been a real advantage for me. Managing the discipline of thinking. It's easy to allow situations and other people to influence your thinking negatively as well as positively. One of the tricky things about seeking ideas and perspective from others is that some people have an agenda other than helping you. That's why it's important to take responsibility for your own thinking. When I was in my 20s, I began to practice this discipline. Every day I will set aside a time to think, and I will determine to think on the right things. If you desire to do the same thing, then do the following. Find a place to think. Beginning with my first job in 1969, I've always found a place to be my daily thinking spot. During those early years in Hillham, Indiana, it was beside a spring outside our home. In Lancaster, Ohio, I used to sit on a big rock. In San Diego, it was an isolated room upstairs at the church. In Atlanta, it's a particular chair in my office. The only time I sit in it is when I need thinking time. Those certainly haven't been the only places I've done my thinking, but they are the ones I've designated for the task. But I can make almost any place a good thinking place as long as I don't have to deal with interruptions. Right now, as I write this, I'm sitting in a chair on the balcony of a cruise ship. My family is scattered all over the ship doing different things, and I sneaked away for a few minutes by myself to think about this book and write down some ideas. I want to encourage you to find a thinking place. When it comes to what works, everybody's different. Some people like to be connected to nature. Others want to be in the midst of, but removed from activity. My friend Andy Stanley likes to sit alone in a restaurant to think. He says he needs a little distraction. J.K. Rowling, author of the Harry Potter books, wrote her early books while sitting in a cafe. Where you go doesn't matter as long as it stimulates your thinking. Set aside think time every day. As important as finding the right place to think is carving out the time. I do nearly all my best thinking early in the morning except for reflective thinking. I usually do that in the evenings before I go to bed. That's when I review my day and try to measure how I did with my daily dozen. But all the other kinds of thinking come best to me in the morning. I often wake up in the wee hours and spend time just jotting ideas on a legal pad while sitting in my thinking chair. I recommend that you try to discover the time of day when your thinking is the sharpest. Then set aside a block of time every day just to think. I believe you'll find that you're much more productive and focused as a result. Find a process that works for you. Everybody has a different way of approaching the process of thinking. Poet Rudyard Kipling had to have pure black ink for his pen before he could write. Philosopher Immanuel Kant used to stare out his window at a stone tower to think. When trees grew up threatening to block his view, he chopped them down. Composer Ludwig van Beethoven poured cold water over his head to refresh himself and stimulate his thinking. Poet Friedrich von Schiller's thinking was stimulated by the smell of rotting apples, which he kept on his desk. Critic and lexicographer Samuel Johnson said that he needed a purring cat, an orange peel, and a cup of tea in order to write. Composer Gioacchino Rossini felt that he worked best in bed, under the covers. I don't need anything specific to trigger my thinking. Some people need music. Some think best while at a computer. Some must write in longhand. Do whatever works for you. Capture your thoughts. If you don't write down your ideas, there is a great danger. You will lose them. In Bird by Bird, Anne Lamott explains how she keeps from losing her best ideas. I have index cards and pens all over the house, by the bed, in the bathroom, in the kitchen, by the phones, and I have them in the glove compartment of my car. I carry one with me in my back pocket when I take my dog for a walk. I used to think that if something was important enough, I'd remember it until I got home, where I could simply write it down in my notebook. But then I wouldn't. Writing down your ideas right away is not cheating. It doesn't say anything about your character. Point 14. I always write down my ideas when I'm in my thinking spot. I use a legal pad. The rest of the day, I keep a small leather-bound notebook with me. I even have something to write with. Next to my bed at night, a small pad with a light attached that illuminates when you remove the pen. That way, I can write a note while still in bed without disturbing Margaret by turning on a light. Have a system and use it. Put your thoughts into action quickly. When you have a great idea but don't do anything with it, then you don't reap the advantage it brings. Dave Getz, founder of CustomZines.com, says, "For me, when an idea hits me, it strikes fire, almost like God speaking. I know that sounds heretical, but there it is. The more time that passes after the idea strikes, the less heat it gives off. I forget parts of it, it doesn't seem as great. Ideas have a short half-life." 15. Have you ever had an idea for a product or service and a few months or years later seen someone else with the same idea take it to market? Author Alfred Montepert said, "Every time a person puts an idea across, he finds 10 people who thought about it before he did, but they only thought about it." Ideas put into action give an advantage. Try to improve your thinking every day. It's true that the more thinking you do, the better you become at it. But you can quickly improve your thinking if you do the following on a daily basis. Focus on the positive. Thinking alone won't guarantee success. You need to think about the right things. Negative thinking and worry actually hinder the thinking process rather than improve it. I believe in this so wholeheartedly that the first book I wrote was a collection of short, uplifting, and instructive chapters. I called it Think on These Things, based on a Bible passage that always inspired me: whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. 16. Focus on the positive, and your thinking will move in a positive direction. Gather good input. I've always been a collector of ideas. I do a lot of reading, and I continually file the ideas and quotations I find. I've found that the more good ideas I'm exposed to, the more my thinking improves. Spend time with good thinkers. If you were to interview a group of top executives in any profession, you would find that well over half had the benefit of being mentored at some time in their careers. And I believe that the greatest benefit anyone receives in that kind of relationship is learning how the mentor thinks. If you spend time with good thinkers, you will find that the exposure sharpens your thinking. I believe that many people take thinking for granted. They see it as a natural function of life. But the truth is that intentional thinking isn't commonplace. What you do every day in the area of thinking really matters because it sets the stage for all your actions, and it will bring you either adversity or advantage. Your thinking decision today. Where do you stand when it comes to thinking today? Ask yourself these 3 questions. 1. Have I already made the decision to practice and develop good thinking daily? 2. If so, when did I make that decision? 3. What exactly did I decide? Your thinking discipline every day. Based on the decision you made concerning thinking, what is the one discipline you must practice today and every day in order to be successful?
Commitment. I don't think I really understood the true value of commitment until 1976. I was the senior pastor of one of the fastest growing churches in Ohio. And the success we were seeing necessitated a $1 million expansion of our facilities. But there was a problem. I was only 29 years old, and I had never led a major building program. Frankly, the task seemed impossible. But at the same time, the future of the church absolutely depended on its success. That's when I made a life decision concerning commitment. If something is worth doing, I will commit myself to carrying it through. I decided that Come what might, I would lead my congregation through the building program. Little did I realize how much that commitment would be tested. Each time we made a decision, more problems arose. Here are just a few. 1. To accommodate the growth, I needed to improve my staff. That meant terminating some people who were very popular. 2. More than 200 people in the church, nearly 15%, left the church because they did not agree with the vision. 3. Our bank agreed to lend us the money only if we first raised $300,000 from among the congregation, but I had never led a large financial campaign, and the most I had ever raised for a project was $25,000. 4. The church board's decision not to give the bid for the building contract to a member of our congregation who owned a construction company caused him to leave the church, and he had been the church's most generous giver. 5. Our architect was careless with disbursements to contractors, which made the project cost over $125,000. More than it should have. You've heard the old saying that motion causes friction? During the entire process, there was enough friction to cause a 5-alarm fire. I felt like I was in the hot seat every day. If I hadn't made the commitment early in the process, I never would have made it through. Making the decision to make and keep proper commitments daily. If you desire to have greater tenacity to accomplish the things you desire, then make the decision to embrace commitment wholeheartedly in your life. Begin by doing the following. Count the cost. After the Nazis drove the British Army from the European continent at Dunkirk and obtained France's surrender in June 1940, the Germans were certain that victory in Europe was at hand and that Great Britain would seek a peace agreement. France also believed that was true. French General Maxime Weygand told Charles de Gaulle, who was a colonel at the time, "When I've been beaten here, England won't wait a week before negotiating with the Reich." 17. But the Germans and the French underestimated the commitment of Winston Churchill, who had become England's Prime Minister in May, and of the British people. Churchill knew what was at stake in the conflict, as evidenced by his remarks at the time. What General Weygand called the Battle of France is over. I expect that the Battle of Britain is about to begin. Upon this battle depends the survival of Christian civilization. Upon it depends our own British life. Hitler knows that he will have to break us in this island or lose the war. If we can stand up to him, all Europe may be free. But if we fail, then the whole world, including the United States, including all that we have known and cared for, will sink into the abyss of a new dark age. Let us therefore brace ourselves to our duties, and so bear ourselves that, if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour. 18. The war that England fought was long and bloody. They suffered terrible bombing from the Nazis, and for a long time they stood alone. But they stood. Their commitment was unwavering. And because they stood, the Allies won the war. I believe their resolve was strong not only because they knew what was at stake, but also because they had a sense of what price they were being asked to pay. It can be very difficult to stand by a commitment naively made. The commitment becomes much stronger when you have already counted the cost. Determined to pay the price. Once you count the cost, then you have to decide whether you are really willing to do what it takes to follow through. U.S. Senator Sam Nunn said, "You have to pay the price. You will find that everything in life exacts a price, and you will have to decide whether the price is worth the prize." When I went off to college, I was determined to stay committed and focused on preparing for the ministry. But I knew there would be a price. Many of my college friends got married while still in school, and some even had children. Margaret and I waited, despite our shared desire to begin our married life. It was a difficult journey. And to this day, I don't recommend engagements as long as ours. But our commitment paid off. A few weeks after we graduated, we got married. And we waited several years before having children. As a result, I was prepared when I entered the ministry, and I could focus on establishing my career during those important early years. Always strive for excellence. Howard W. Newton said, "People forget how fast you did a job, but they remember how well you did it." Few things fire up a person's commitment like dedication to excellence. The desire for excellence carried Michelangelo through to the completion of his work on the Sistine Chapel. Excellence drove Edison to keep trying until he figured out how to make a light bulb that worked. Excellence drives the company's Jim Collins wrote about in Built to Last and Good to Great. Anyone who desires to achieve and become successful must be like a fine craftsman, committed to excellence. A great craftsman wants you to inspect his work, to look closely at its finest details. In contrast, sloppy people hide their work. And if anyone finds fault with it, shoddy workers find fault with their tools. Which are you most like? Excellence means doing your very best in everything, in every way. That kind of commitment will take you where half-hearted people will never go. Managing the discipline of commitment. After I made the decision to commit myself to the building program at my church, I knew that I would need to find a way to keep myself on track. So I determined to live out this discipline. Every day I will renew my commitment and think about the benefits that come from it. To do that, I carried a laminated card with me every day for 18 months. Here's what was written on it. The moment one definitely commits oneself, then Providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issue from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance which no man could have dreamed would come his way. William H. Murray. I read that card every day as we were going through the project. On especially difficult days when I felt like throwing in the towel, I read it 2 or 3 times. It helped me to stay focused and feel encouraged. I thought, if I stay committed and do all I can, and then I ask God to make up the difference, we can achieve this. And we did. When you accomplish something that you once believed was impossible, it makes you a new person. It changes the way you see yourself and the world. My thinking went to a new level, and the vision for my leadership expanded. I never would have gotten there without commitment. My personal commitment and that of many others was the key to our success. As you strive to keep your commitments daily, keep the following in mind. Expect commitment to be a struggle. When our children were young and living at home, Margaret and I decided one summer we wanted to take them on a vacation that focused on how the United States was built as a nation. We started out in New York City. We went to Ellis Island, the longtime gateway into the country, and got a feel for the millions of immigrants who came to America with the dream of building a better life. We visited Philadelphia. We saw the room where our country became a nation with the signing of the Declaration of Independence. We viewed the Liberty Bell. And we visited the graves of the brave men who signed the Declaration of Independence. After that, we traveled south to Williamsburg, Virginia, the home of Patrick Henry, who declared, "Give me liberty or give me death." And we ended the trip in Washington, D.C. As we looked up at the towering Washington Monument, we were reminded of the United States' struggle to become a nation. As we gazed at the huge statue of Lincoln at his memorial, we recalled the struggle we have endured to remain a nation. Everywhere we went, we were confronted with the commitment of the men and women who founded and preserved our country. We learned about the risks they took, the battles they fought, the sacrifices they made. The greatest honors were reserved for those who endured the greatest struggles. The stakes were high, but so were the rewards. We still enjoy the freedom they won for us. That trip taught a great lesson to our family. Anything worth having is going to be a struggle. Commitment doesn't come easy, but when you're fighting for something you believe in, the struggle is worth it. Don't rely on talent alone. If you want to reach your potential, you need to add a strong work ethic to your talent. Poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow shared much insight when he wrote, "The heights by great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were toiling upward in the night." 19. If you want something out of your day, you must put something in it. Your talent is what God put in before you were born. Your skills are what you put in yesterday. Commitment is what you must put in today in order to make today your masterpiece and make tomorrow a success. Focus on choices, not conditions. In general, people approach daily commitment in one of two ways. They focus on the external or the internal. Those who focus on the external expect conditions to determine whether they keep their commitments. Because conditions are so transitory, their commitment level changes like the wind. In contrast, people who base their actions on the internal usually focus on their choices. Each choice is a crossroad, one that will either confirm or compromise their commitments. When you come to a crossroad, you can recognize it. Because a personal decision is required. The decision will cost you something. Others will likely be influenced by it. Your choices are the only thing you truly control. You cannot control your circumstances, nor can you control others. By focusing on your choices, and then making them with integrity, you control your commitment. And that is what often separates success from failure. Be single-minded. Nothing stokes commitment like single-minded effort that results in achievement. A great example of that truth can be found in the story of English minister William Carey. Although he had only an elementary education, by the time Carey was in his teens, he could read the Bible in 6 languages. Because of his talent for languages, when he was in his early 30s he was chosen to be a missionary to India. 6 years later, in 1799, he founded the Serampore mission. A few years after that, he became professor of Oriental languages at Fort William College in Calcutta. He also used his talent with languages in becoming a publisher. His press at Serampore printed Bibles in 40 languages and dialects for more than 300 million people. To what did Carey attribute his success? How was he able to accomplish what he did? He said it was because he was a plodder. Describing himself, Carey said, "Anything beyond this will be too much. I can plod. That is my only genius. I can persevere in any definite pursuit. To this I owe everything." 20. Do what's right even when you don't feel like it. Thomas A. Buckner said, "To bring one's self to a frame of mind and to the proper energy to accomplish things that require plain hard work continuously is the one big battle that everyone has. When this battle is won for all time, then everything is easy." One of the things I admire about great athletes is their understanding of this truth. That's one of the reasons I enjoy watching the Olympics. When the Olympic athletes come into the stadium during the opening ceremonies and prepare to participate in the games, one of the things they do is recite the following: "I have prepared. I have followed the rules. I will not quit." Anyone who can say that with integrity can be proud of him or herself, no matter what happens afterward. As Arthur Gordon, author of A Touch of Wonder, said, "Nothing is easier than saying words. Nothing is harder than living them, day after day. What you promise today must be renewed and redecided tomorrow and each day that stretches out before you." 21. If you do what you should only when you really feel like it, you won't keep your commitments consistently. My friend Ken Blanchard says, when you're interested in something, you do it only when it's convenient. When you're committed to something, you accept no excuses, only results. If you refuse to give in to excuses, no matter how good they may sound or how good they will make you feel in the moment, you have the potential to go far. Your commitment decision today. Where do you stand when it comes to commitment today? Ask yourself these 3 questions. 1. Have I already made the decision to make and keep proper commitments daily? 2. If so, when did I make that decision? 3. What exactly did I decide? Your commitment discipline every day. Based on the decision you made concerning commitment, what is the one discipline you must practice today and every day in order to be successful?
Finances. When I was growing up, it was obvious very early that my brother, Larry, and I had very different attitudes toward money. We were complete opposites. As a kid, all Larry wanted to do was work and make money. All I wanted to do was play with my friends. He spent his summers working. I spent my summers shooting hoops. He saved his money. I had nothing to save. When Larry was 16 years old, he bought himself a nice car. With his own money, a 4-year-old Ford. I didn't have a car until I graduated from college. It was an old beat-up Ford Falcon, and guess from whom I borrowed the money to buy it? From Larry and from my younger sister, Trish. When I was studying for the ministry, I realized I was choosing a profession in which I would not make a lot of money. I didn't mind that because I was doing what I believed I was called to do and what would be personally fulfilling. But I also recognized that when a person has no money, he has few options. In 1985, Margaret and I made a decision: we will sacrifice today so that we can have options tomorrow. From then on, we've determined to live by this financial formula. 10% to church/charity. 10% to investments. 80% to living expenses. Around that same time, our friend Tom Phillip offered us a wonderful opportunity to invest in one of his retirement centers. We gladly accepted. For several years, we've not only continued to put 10% of our income into investments, but when those investments have made money, instead of spending it, we have rolled it over into other investments. Over time, our money has been building. And the older Margaret and I get, the more options we have as a result. Making the decision to earn and properly manage finances daily. If you desire to have options, yet you have not done a good job of earning and properly managing your finances daily, then put yourself in position to make a good decision concerning finances by doing the following. Put the value of things into perspective. A husband and wife attended a county fair where a man in an old biplane was giving rides for $50. The couple wanted to ride, but they thought the pilot's price was too high. They tried negotiating to get him to lower the price, offering $50 for them both, but he wouldn't budge. Finally, the pilot made them an offer. "You pay me the whole $100, and I'll take you up," he said. "And if you don't say a single word during the flight, I'll give you back all your money." They agreed, and the couple got into the plane. Up they went, and the pilot proceeded to do every aerial maneuver he knew, diving, looping, rolling, and flying upside down. When the plane landed, the pilot said to the husband, "Congratulations. Here's your $100. You didn't say a word." "Nope," answered the husband, "but I almost did when my wife fell out." It's a hokey story, but it directs us to a truth about our culture. People tend to value money and things over what's really important in life: other people. French historian and political scientist Alexis de Tocqueville remarked about the United States that he knew of no other country where love of money has such a grip on men's hearts. Remarkably, he wrote that more than 100 years ago. I wonder what he would say if he were alive today. To know whether your attitude about money and possessions is what it should be, ask yourself the following 5 questions. 1. Am I preoccupied with things? 2. Am I envious of others? 3. Do I find my personal value in possessions? 4. Do I believe that money will make me happy? 5. Do I continually want more? If you answered yes to one or more of these questions, you need to do some soul searching. Billy Graham rightly points out, if a person gets his attitude toward money straight, it will help straighten out almost every other area of his life. Materialism is a mindset. There's nothing wrong with possessing money or nice things. Likewise, there's nothing wrong with living modestly. Materialism is not about possession, it's an obsession. I've known materialistic people with no money and non-materialistic people who possess lots of money. Haven't you? Recognize your season of life. Not every phase of life is the same, nor should we try to make it that way. Ideally, a person's life should follow a pattern where the main focus goes from learning to earning to returning. Here's what I mean about each phase. Learn. When you're young, your focus should be on exploring your talents, discovering your purpose, and learning your trade. For many people, this phase occurs during their teens and 20s, although a few trailblazers do it earlier and some late bloomers don't have things worked out until well into their 30s, or later. The exact timing isn't important. What matters is that you accept that there is a phase of life where learning is your primary objective and that you shouldn't take shortcuts to financial gain and miss the big picture of your life. Earn. If you're on track with your purpose, you've learned your trade well, and you practice it with excellence, the hope is that you will be able to earn a good living. Obviously, your choice of profession affects your earning power greatly. For many people, the season when their earning is most effective occurs during their 30s, 40s, and 50s. During this phase of life, you should strive to take care of your family and prepare for your future. Return. We should always try to be generous, no matter our age. But if you've worked hard and planned well, you may enter a phase of life that is most rewarding, where you can focus on giving back to others. Most often, that occurs when people are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. Margaret and I are planning how we hope to do that in the coming years. Obviously, these phases are generalizations, but they present a pattern for which to strive. If you are young, then you may be eager to leave the learning phase. Be patient. Because the more diligently you go after phase 1, the greater your potential to maximize the other phases. If you're older and you didn't lay a good foundation for yourself, don't despair. Keep learning and growing. You still have a chance to finish well. But if you give up, you'll never go up. Reduce your debt. Michael Kidwell and Steve Rode, authors of Get Out of Debt, Smart Solutions to Your Money Problems, believe every person in debt is suffering from some type of depression. Debt is one of the leading causes of divorce, lack of sleep, and poor work performance. It is truly one of the deep, dark secrets that people have. It robs them of their self-worth and keeps them from achieving dreams. 22. Going into debt for things that appreciate in value can be a good idea. Purchasing a house, securing transportation so you can work, improving your education, and investing in a business are good things as long as you can manage them well. But many people incur debt for frivolous things. When you're still paying for something you no longer use or even have, it means trouble. Kidwell and Rhodes suggest 5 steps to reduce debt. 1. Stop incurring debt. 2. Track your cash. 3. Plan for the future. 4. Don't expect instant miracles. 5. Seek professional help. Point 23. Don't let your possessions or your lifestyle possess you. If you're a slave to debt, find a way to free yourself. Put your financial formula into place. Someone once observed that the difference between the rich and the poor is that the rich invest their money and spend what's left, while the poor spend their money and invest what's left. If you haven't decided to plan your finances, you're headed for trouble. Put yourself on a budget. Create a financial formula that works for you. You may want to try the October 10th, 80 approach that we use. But do something. The old saying is corny but true: failing to plan is like planning to fail. Managing the discipline of finances. I have to admit that money has never been my number one motivation in life. Truthfully, finances were so low on my list of priorities that for a time I neglected them, which is probably why I didn't make my good life decision concerning finances until I was in my late 30s. But we've all seen what lack of good financial management can do to people in their twilight years. Recently my son-in-law, Steve, and I went to eat at a restaurant when we were down in Florida, and a lovely lady in her mid-70s waited on us. Now, you never know, another Person's situation, some people work into their 80s simply for the joy of work or to be with people. But I know that the majority of people who keep working in physically demanding jobs during that season of life do it because they have no other choice. My friend financial expert Ron Blue says that the average annual income for people over age 65 is $6,300.24. In the case of our waitress, I sensed that she worked because she had no other options. So Steve and I left her a great tip. The next time you find yourself being waited on by senior citizens, you might want to do something for them. I'm still growing in the discipline of finances. I settled my personal financial issue years ago with October 10th, 80, but it's been only in the last decade that I've learned to be better at finances. In business, I used to focus on the vision for the organization, hire the best leaders I could find to join me in achieving it, and then lead to the best of my ability. I pretty much left the financial aspects of the business to others. But my brother, Larry, took me to task for that attitude. He told me that I had no right to neglect business finances just because it wasn't an area of strength or passion for me. So now, at home and in business, I maintain this discipline. Every day I will focus on my financial game plan so that each day I will have more, not fewer, options. The earlier you make the decision and practice the discipline of sound financial management, the more options you will have to help you approach your finances every day with the right attitude. Do the following. Become a good earner. To become a good financial manager, you must first have something to manage. That's why I believe the first discipline of finances is to maximize your earning potential. By that I don't mean to neglect the other important areas of life in order to make a buck. Nor am I suggesting that your focus should always be on money. Just maintain a strong work ethic and learn how to make and manage money. Develop relationships with people who are successful in this area and learn from them. There are also plenty of good books about personal and business finances. Work ethic, on the other hand, is more about desire than knowledge. It comes from within. Anything can fuel that desire. The passion to serve others, the promise of escaping the circumstances of our birth, a vision for progress, or a personal passion. What often puts out the fire of desire is the belief that the work is too great for the return. If you find yourself thinking that you have it especially hard in your job or career, you might need to put things into perspective. Take a look at the rules that employees at MT Corey Carriage and Iron Works were asked to follow in 1872. 1. Employees will daily sweep the floors, dust the furniture, shelves, and showcases. 2. Each day fill lamps, clean chimneys, and trim wicks, wash windows once a week. 3. Each clerk will bring a bucket of water and a scuttle of coal for the day's business. 4. Make your pens carefully. You may whittle nibs to individual taste. 5. This office will open at 7 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. daily, except on the Sabbath. 6. Men employees will be given an evening off each week for courting purposes, or 2 evenings if they go regularly to church. 7. Every employee should lay aside from each pay a goodly sum of his earnings for his benefit during his declining years so that he will not become a burden upon the charity of his betters. 8. Any employee who smokes Spanish cigars, uses liquor in any form, gets shaved at a barber shop, or frequents public halls will give good reason to suspect his worth, intentions, integrity, and honesty. 9. The employee who has performed his labors faithfully and without fault for a period of 5 years in my service, and who has been thrifty and attentive to his religious duties and is looked upon by his fellow man as a substantial and law-abiding citizen will be given an increase of 5 cents per day in his pay, providing that just returns in profits from the business permit. We enjoy a lot of advantages today that people didn't have in previous generations. One of them is that we don't have to fulfill the same expectations of those in previous centuries. With the right attitude and a willingness to pay the price, almost anyone can pursue nearly any opportunity and achieve it. Be grateful every day. One of the most important things you can do for yourself is keep your perspective and be thankful for whatever you have. Poet Rudyard Kipling once told his audience while speaking at a graduation ceremony, "Do not pay too much attention to fame, power, or money. Someday you will meet a person who cares for none of these, and then you will know how poor you are. If you work hard and maintain an attitude of gratitude, you'll find it easier to manage your finances every day. Don't compare yourself to others. Whenever people start comparing themselves to others, they get into trouble. Comparisons of money and possessions can be especially detrimental. Wanting to keep up with neighbors or appear well off gets many people into horrible debt. New Yorker financial writer James Surowiecki says, Americans have always been stricken by the disease that some have called luxury fever or affluenza. Even if we aren't rich yet, we'd like to look as if we were. 25. If you see your neighbors buying new furnishings for their home, taking elaborate vacations, and driving a new vehicle every year, does something stir inside you to do the same? That someone appears to be in circumstances similar to yours doesn't mean anything. Your neighbors might earn twice as much as you do. Or they may be in debt up to their eyeballs and 3/4 of the way to bankruptcy court. Don't make assumptions, and don't try to be like someone else. Give as much as you can. Author Bruce Larson says, money is another pair of hands to heal and feed and bless the desperate families of the earth. In other words, money is my other self. Money can go where I do not have time to go, where I do not have a passport to go. My money can go in my place and heal and bless and feed and help. A man's money is an extension of himself. That's true of your money only if you are willing to part with it. Or to put it a more colorful way, as Hannah Anderson Clothing Company founder Gunn Denhart did, money is like manure. If you let it pile up, it just smells. But if you spread it around, you can encourage things to grow. My brother, Larry, recently gave me this quotation from Blaise Pascal, I love poverty because Jesus loved it. I love wealth because it affords me the means of helping the needy. I keep faith with everyone. I've mentioned options a lot in this chapter. That may seem like a selfish word to you. But I have to tell you, for me having options is about service. Philanthropist Andrew Carnegie said his goal was to spend the first half of his life accumulating wealth and the second half giving it away. What a great idea. My desire is to spend my future years giving to others. I won't be able to give on the scale that Carnegie did, but that's not important. What matters is that I do what I can by practicing financial discipline. Your financial decision today. Where do you stand when it comes to finances today? Ask yourself these 3 questions. 1. Have I already made the decision to earn and properly manage my finances daily? 2. If so, when did I make that decision? 3. What exactly did I decide? Your financial discipline every day. Based on the decision you made concerning finances, what is the one discipline you must practice today and every day in order to be successful?
This is the end of Chapter 1 of John C. Maxwell's book entitled Listeners Make Today Count. Dear members of the YIS Media family, we sincerely hope that you are happy with the story. Give us credit for your sacrifice of time and follow-up. Stay safe until we meet in the second part of the book.